Happy Friday. Welcome to another episode of BrainScratch. I'm John Lorden. Thank you so much for joining me here today as we look into another terrible occurrence. This one, if this doesn't grab at your heart, I don't know what will. A father driving home from visiting two children that are living with his ex-wife. He's got another child with his new wife that's in the car with him. She's 2 years old. He's murdered on the way home. She is very likely the only witness of the actual shooting. That's the case we're looking at today. Let's go ahead and start by learning where this takes place, starting at Wikipedia. Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Jacksonville Beach is a coastal resort city in Duval County, Florida. As of the 2010 census, Jacksonville Beach had a total population of 21,362. And judging from some of the photos you see here over on the right, looks like a very nice place to live. It looks like a beautiful part of the country. Unfortunately, we have a tragedy that strikes there, and something that isn't too common for the area. I did see someone from law enforcement in that area saying that they couldn't even remember the last time they had a homicide there. Unfortunately, that would change a little over 6 months ago. Starting at WOKV, the Jacksonville Police Department is investigating after a father of four was shot and killed in front of his 2-year-old daughter Wednesday night. The shooting happened near Jacksonville Drive and Sanctuary Way North. Police said the 33-year-old father died at the scene, but his child, who was in the car when the shooting happened, was not hurt, thankfully. Police first received a report of a person being shot around 8 p.m. They're now working the investigation as a homicide. A tire and handgun shell casings were found where the shooting happened. Police shared an image of a damaged tire, but are unsure if it's related to the incident. And here we have a post over at Facebook from the Jacksonville Beach Police Department, and we can see the tire that they're talking about. A big part of this mystery right from the start. Exactly how does it play into this? We have someone leaving a comment here. What is this tire from? Very, very good question. And just taking a look at it, this tire looks really beat up. When I first saw this, I was thinking, well, someone went to a scrapyard and picked one up for this purpose, likely, which we'll get to once law enforcement starts commenting on that. But with some of the later information, maybe not. Maybe it's not something that was picked up from a scrapyard. Continuing at firstcoastnews.com, police identify father of four gunned down in Jacksonville Beach. Jared Bridegan, and here is a picture of him as well. 33 years old, was found shot to death near the exit of the Sanctuary neighborhood in a wooded area. This happened back on February 16th, 2022. I believe that's a Wednesday night. During a news conference on Friday, police urged the public to give them a call if they were traveling in the area of the Sanctuary neighborhood between 7:15 and 8 p.m. Even if that person believes they didn't see anything, police are still asking for a phone call. Pretty rare that we hear that. And quite honestly, this is a case where a few rare things happen. That's just the first of several. Sergeant Tanya Tater says, even if you don't live here, even if you didn't see anything, please call. United States Custom and Border Protection was on the scene Friday, which Tater was asked about during a news conference. She said the agency and its dogs were kind enough to help them perform an article search and that the agency was not directly related to the case. Another thing that is strange, I don't think I've ever seen a case where Customs and Border Protection assist with a murder investigation in this manner. Now, typically on missing persons cases, we see a lot of different law enforcement agencies that will pitch in various services. But for homicide investigations, kind of interesting to see, especially U.S. Customs and Border Protection reach out and help with this case. And it's not clear who asked who. I mean, it could just be that if they have a local facility nearby, they knew that they had search dogs, and local law enforcement reached out to them and said, hey, we need some help with this. We really don't have that type of resource that they pitched in. I mean, we are talking about a police department that's servicing about 20,000 people. It's probably not a giant police department. Like I mentioned previously, they don't seem to handle homicides frequently. Maybe that's part of them asking for help also. I think it's great that there's other departments to help, but I do just want to point out it's not something that we see all too commonly from this department in particular. But Neighbors tell First Coast News the shooting happened on a one-way street out of a neighborhood directly onto the highway. Jackson Beach Police Department says they found shell casings from a handgun at the scene. Obviously, good to have some form of evidence in this. We're talking a shooting. Seems like it happened fairly quickly. Maybe not a lot of interaction directly between the perpetrator and the victim. So sometimes you don't always get great opportunities in instances like this for evidence. But thankfully, shell casings from a handgun found at the scene. Maybe those can be tested. I know sometimes they will test those for fingerprints in particular. You know, when people are loading them up, they're getting their fingers on those casings. Occasionally they can get a print or a partial print off that. So keeping our fingers crossed that we have something like that happening in this case. Here is Jared with his family. This is his current wife. Basically, the two children are from the previous relationship. They've been blurred out. That's kind of at the request of his ex-wife. We're going to get into much more of that. The two children that you can see, including the one he's holding, she's the 2-year-old that was with him when this happened. And then, of course, his wife and their new baby. Now, where this went down, let's just go ahead and bring up a map real quick. We can see we're kind of close to the coast here. And we've heard that Lake Sanctuary neighborhood name kicked around. So the HOA for Lake Sanctuary actually came up when I did a search on it here. But really, it seems like this piece of Sanctuary Road, you can see the road looks normal here and it kind of breaks into two separate pieces. Well, one of those is the one-way lane. So we're getting kind of, it's interesting to me here that it happens in this particular area. Something else about this area that's tough. Look, we've got neighborhoods back here. We've got some nice houses in these neighborhoods. I'm sure we have doorbell cameras, maybe some other surveillance cameras happening all throughout these neighborhoods. But then you get to this stretch here where basically you've just got thick trees and brush kind of covering up whatever's going to happen here on Sanctuary Boulevard. And this is actually where the shooting did occur. Was there a reason why it happened on a one-lane road in particular? We're going to see there probably was. Over at actionnewsjax.com, and I want to certainly take my hat off to them. They've been doing a lot of coverage on this case and making a lot of significant discoveries in terms of the investigation from the media's point of view. This is a case that there's certainly logistics we got to talk about in terms of what happened at the scene, some of the evidence stuff. But then from the media's point of view, there's a social component. Yes, it has to do with his ex. And they just dive into that almost in a way that I think is going overboard. And we'll get to that as I'm kind of skirting around some of that information. There's pieces of it that I think are important to consider when you're talking about this type of case. There's a lot of it that I don't think is important to consider. And quite honestly, some of it really does seem to be infringing on the privacy of his children, in particular with his ex-wife. There's like a bunch of medical information. There's just so much detail. Unfortunately, this is one of those cases that has seemed to grab the public attention. There's a lot of articles on this case. I had to go through dozens and dozens, possibly over 100, maybe close to 150 articles for today's video. And unfortunately, most of them are just repeating the same thing. But then you get some places, Daily Mail, that will dig in and kind of get all this other information. I can't really say it's always helpful to the case. So I'm going to try to be tactful as I'm kind of navigating through all this. But Action News Jax, they've been doing a really good job by this case, in my opinion. Jacksonville Beach police believe father of 4 was killed in targeted attack. There seems to have certainly been a reason why it happened on this stretch. No cameras, one lane of traffic, pretty easy to control what's happening here, and pretty easy to obstruct the path. That tire found laying in the center of this road. That's what investigators are considering with this. It's believed to be a targeted attack based off the circumstances, but it's unclear if Bridegan was the specific target. Action News Jax was told over the phone by Sergeant Tanya Tater that he was shot multiple times and from roughly 3 to 4 feet away. Neighbor Mark Warski heard the shots from across the street. but nothing else. Quote, I didn't hear any arguments or raised voices. Basically, all I heard were the shots. Now, if you've been watching Lord and Arts Uncovered, we covered a case a few weeks ago, the Elizabeth Barraza case. Somewhat similar circumstances, a vehicle that's involved. She's in her front yard. Someone comes up approximately 3 or 4 feet away, 3 to 4 shots. Even in that instance, we have some video. There's clear conversation that's happening. There's something that shooter wanted to relay to her and make sure that she knew before they did that act. Here, depending on Mark's ability to hear what's going on out there, which I do have to question because we are talking about some significant, we've got trees, we've got bushes, we've got a lot of elements that might obscure sound, especially if it's a normal speaking voice. But it's curious that he wouldn't have heard maybe a scream, maybe someone raised their voice at some point in this conversation, if the conversation has any chance to escalate. Based on what this witness is saying, basically it's just the gunshots. That's it. So targeted attack based on location. Now we've got this consideration that the tire might have been put out there, possibly to stop him, make him get out of his car to go move the tire so he can continue. Certainly seems like it. And if it is a targeted attack, it almost, if you consider that there was no personal aspect, there was no conversation to happen, murder for hire situation certainly pops to the forefront of my mind. A car tire is still a major piece of evidence because police say it was already on the road as Bridegan's hazard lights were on, and he was found on the ground next to the driver's side door. Another aspect about it being a targeted attack, seems like he didn't even get very far away from his vehicle. It seems like he didn't get over to the tire. He literally opened the door. Unless you're thinking there's some other possibility, he took several steps away, then someone came up, he moved back towards his vehicle. Certainly a possibility, but this all seems like it happened very, very quick. Action News Jack's law and safety expert Dale Carson, who has years of experience in law enforcement, says the tire could have been used as a setup. Quote, when there's an obstruction in the road, that's an old trick. We put something in the road, the train stops, or in this case, the car. The robbers then do what they need to do, Carson said. Interesting he used the term robbers there because I was thinking about the possibility. I mean, what is this? Is this indeed a robbery? There are no reports of anything going missing, no reports of anything being taken from him. We're not hearing his wallet was gone, his phone was gone, there was something of value in the truck that was missing. Nothing like that. This seems like a very specific, direct, and targeted attack. Now, there is a question of, is there a possibility that they got the wrong person? And one of the things, just kind of when I was clicking around in Google Maps here, first of all, you've got this car that I don't know why just decides to stop here kind of in between where the 2 lanes split. But look at all this traffic that's happening back here. And we're talking on a Wednesday night, 7:30, 8 o'clock. How long could that tire have been sitting out there? And when you consider that, the timing of getting the tire in place when you knew he was going to be coming down there, that's going to take some form of coordination. I can't imagine that you could do that with less than 2 people. You would have to have one person that's at the scene, ready with the tire, and you'd have to have someone else somewhere along this path that would know, okay, here he comes, another 30 seconds, get that tire out there. There seems to be some form of coordination in this attack, at least in my opinion. And that coordination might get a little more interesting when we discuss where he was coming from. But let's go ahead and continue. Another article from news4jax.com. Detective Sergeant David Young with the Jacksonville Beach Police Department said Bridegan was shot to death next to the driver's door of his SUV, which was also struck by gunfire. Thankfully, the man's 2-year-old daughter was not hurt. He's saying that it was a miracle she wasn't hurt because we literally have bullets hitting the SUV. He goes on to say, anytime there's a child involved that could have been hit, it gets to you. And he's clearly upset while he's speaking about this as well. While police have picked up patrols in the area, neighbors say that they're living in fear. They're constantly checking for updates. They have children here, and they don't know who the killer is or what the motive was. Tips are coming in, but investigators say they need more. They said some neighbors have been reluctant to answer their door and even speak with police. Quote, "There isn't a stone that we're not going to turn. There isn't a place that we're not going to check," Young said. Bridegan was driving a black Volkswagen Atlas, dropping off some of his children at their mother's house nearby. He had 2 children from a previous marriage and 2 from his current marriage. So from what I understand, the path to the mother's home is north of this, a few miles north of this. And of course, I know this is already starting to look a particular way, and I can tell you the media is certainly looking in that direction as well. Is there some involvement on the ex-wife's part? Would there be some reason for that? But just even with the logistics of what's happening here, you have to wonder about it, because this is a coordinated attack by appearances, because you have to consider that tire couldn't have been sitting out there for 30 minutes. Not the type of thing where you can go lay the tire out, go back to where he is, follow him from there, wait till he gets to the tire. The chances of someone else trying to drive out on that particular stretch, extremely high. That tire could be moved by the time you get there, and then your whole plan is gone. So that it doesn't occur to me. I don't think it happened that way. There's got to be coordination here. Is the ex-wife part of that coordination in some way? And would she have a reason to be? Bridegan worked as a software manager for companies including Microsoft. Detective Sergeant Young said it was specific. He used this route all the time. Whoever knew the route. Even running down that road, in my mind, let's say someone followed him around for a matter of weeks, which they would have, I think, had to know that he would be using that route on that particular night. You still have the logistics of setting that whole thing up. To me, there still has to be a trigger. There has to be some other indicator to let the person know, okay, it's time for me to get that out. He said his goal was to bring Bridegan's loved ones answers and arrest whoever is responsible for the murder. It's emotional for everybody. It's emotional for the detectives. It's emotional to have to look at somebody and say, we're trying to find the right answers. Detectives acknowledged a lot of speculation and rumors in the neighborhood. However, police are urging people to not jump to conclusions. They said everything and anything is on the table with the investigation. First Coast News reports that the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives is now offering a separate reward. ATF is offering $5,000, and that's in addition to the $8,000 offered by First Coast Crime Stoppers. Another kind of strange twist. It doesn't seem... I don't recall other cases where you have the ATF offering rewards for homicide investigations. The Jacksonville Beach Police Department has been working with federal agencies such as ATF, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and also the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office on this case. Quote, "We appreciate their assistance and support with this investigation," said the police department in a press release. It does raise questions. Even First Coast News asks here, why is the ATF involved? And it leads some people to speculate, is he responsible for, does he work with them in some way? Is he some type of informant or agent of some kind? And I have to say, the thought kind of ran through my mind as well. Some of the pictures that you see of this guy, he's really strong. Like, he's built almost like you would expect someone in law enforcement or maybe like a firefighter to be, something like that. In a news release, the police department clarified that ATF's involvement is not because Bridegan was a federal agent. ATF is a law enforcement agency in the United States, Department of Justice, and like the other agencies previously mentioned, is providing us assistance. They have resources that smaller agencies do not always have, said Police Sergeant Tanya Tater. Again, it's not uncommon for additional agencies to assist with investigations, particularly when they offer different resources. The ultimate goal of all agencies is to work together to solve crimes. I wish this was the norm in more cases, to be quite honest. It's just strange to me because we don't really see this. And then it's just once again noting that she was basically asked the same thing about the Customs and Border Protection, which that one, in my mind, kind of makes a little more sense because they specifically said that, hey, we were using their dogs. We were using them for a search in the woods. We've got that stretch where the road kind of splits, basically has a little bit of woods right here on the west side of it, also on the east side. I mean, who knows? There could be evidence on anywhere around this. So they needed some help searching this. In my mind, that's pretty easy to understand, pretty easy to explain. But another agency swinging in and just saying, okay, here's another $5,000. That, I don't know. It's just different. It's different than we've seen before. Now we learn about a vehicle of interest that was caught on camera, and we do have footage here to take a look at. We've got this truck. This looks like a Ford truck. We're going to get some more details on it. Blue. It's got, I think, brown trim on the bottom part of it. And you can see, I mean, they're tracking its movements. They've got, I think, 4 different cameras that have tracked it. The truck is believed to be a dark-colored 2004 to 2008 Ford F-150. The car has running boards, brown trim, and a silver toolbox. So here they have a picture of one that is like the vehicle. Looks like they matched up the colors. It's perfect. It's basically just missing the toolbox at this point. And considering it's a 2004 to 2008, you know, it's got some years on it. Who knows? There might be other identifying marks in terms of dents or scratches, but unfortunately they didn't get that from the footage. Something interesting that jumped out at me as soon as I saw this picture is this tire, this rim in particular, look familiar? Yeah, I think that is actually an exact match for this same one that was found in the road. The thing that's interesting about it to me is, I mean, this tire looks jacked up. But I had an F-150, and if I recall, I don't think the spare had the regular rim on it. I think the spare had, you know, frequently your spare will have like a, I mean, just an kind of uglier, cheaper rim on it because it's not meant to stay on the vehicle. It's just to get you to where you can get the tire repaired. This seems to be one of the main rims that would have been on the vehicle, but it's super, super dirty. Probably hadn't been on the vehicle in a while. I mean, it's possible. It's possible that the spare in this particular F-150 had the full rim on it. But it just leads me to think, is there a chance that we're actually looking for an F-150 that has a different rim on one of the tires? Unfortunately, from the footage that has been released, and we've even got some still shots here, you can't really tell. I mean, I could tell that this is one of the proper rims because we've got the mark that you can clearly see of this kind of split that happens as each of the legs reaches out. But we don't have enough pictures to look at them all and say, oh, okay, we know that the front right tire in particular is one that doesn't have the proper rim or something like that. It might help it be a little more identifiable. But law enforcement isn't saying that this vehicle is related directly to the shooting. Here at Jacksonville.com, police are seeking the public's help, although Sergeant Tanya Tater said they cannot say why. Quote, "We can't discuss what this interest is. If we can locate it, we can go from there. We're still encouraging the public to come forward with any information they have, particularly now in light of this vehicle." The other thing about these vehicles, F-150s, like they sell like crazy in this country. There are a lot of them. So trying to pin this down, like, you know, you would think, okay, well, they got to start looking at records, start looking at vehicles that are registered in that area that fit that description. That list is huge. Even weeding it down to color, like this looks like it's a factory color job on this. There's going to be still a ton of those as well. How do you find the right one? I mean, here we are over 6 months later. We don't have any news of them finding it. As a matter of fact, it sounds like they're still asking for help finding this. So I don't think those avenues of investigation of trying to trace it through purchase records or registration, I don't think they're working in this particular case. Let's learn a little bit more about a wife now left behind, wife of only, I believe, about 5 years. Kirsten and Jared. The couple first met online on a dating app and clicked immediately. Quote, "What first struck me was his profile picture. It was of him with his twins," she said. Jared would drive 6.5 hours from Jacksonville to her home in Charlotte, North Carolina to see her on the weekends when he didn't have his children with him. About 4 months later, she moved to Jacksonville and the pair married in 2017. "He was just a good guy through and through," she said. "Whenever we got into an argument, he was always the first to say I'm sorry, even if it was my fault." Jared was from Jacksonville and graduated from the Douglas Anderson School of the Arts before earning his college degree at Utah Valley University. He was working as a manager of user experience at Microsoft when he was killed. Kirsten also had worked for the software giant as an account manager, but quit a few months ago to become a full-time mom. He was a good neighbor, a good friend, a good colleague, Kirsten said. He was a very loved man. Kirsten declined to discuss Jared's relationship with his ex-wife, but told a source at Fox News that it was strained. Though invited, Jared's twins from his prior marriage did not attend their father's funeral. His ex-wife couldn't immediately be reached for comment. Basically, his ex-wife stays quiet through the first phase of media kicking out around this, and then this story seems to get so big that she eventually does talk. And we're going to hear that story. Yeah, I mean, obviously the twins were invited to come to the father's funeral. There's some more detail to that according to the ex-wife's family. We'll get that as we go forward. Over at news4jax.com, for the first time, Bridegan's widow is publicly sharing her family's pain as detectives search for the killer. Even if you don't care about our family, someone is out there that did this, said a teary-eyed Kirsten Bridegan. They didn't care that there was a child in the car. They didn't care that he was a great guy. They just shot him. Everyone should care about that. He leaves behind twins, Abby and Liam, who are 9 years old from a previous marriage. Jared and Kirsten Bridegan share Bexley. Bexley's a 2-year-old that was in the SUV at the time of the shooting, thankfully not hurt. And London, who is only 7 months old when this goes down. The minute you met him, you just fell in love with the guy he was, Kirsten said. He honestly was the best dad. Whenever I needed a break, he would scoop up the kids, take them outside, and give me a minute to catch my breath. Kirsten Bridegan said she had a gut feeling when he didn't return home about 8:30 p.m. like usual. She couldn't reach him, so she started driving his route. I took the route we normally take to get to the beach, she said, and I kept calling his phone. And then one of the policemen answered it. And that's when I knew my gut feeling was right, that something was really wrong. And I asked if my husband was okay, and I was just told to drive to the police station. And I asked again the same thing, just come to the police station. But my daughter was okay. Kirsten Bridegan says she has no idea why anyone would want to kill her husband, especially in front of his daughter. She said she's not aware of any threats or disputes to foreshadow his murder. Quote, nothing. I rack my brain. I stay up. I don't get much sleep. I stay up all night long thinking, why? Was there any hint that this was coming? There is none. His kids deserve to know why their dad is not here. They need answers. Bexley was there. She has some really hard days and some good days. She just has a lot of questions and some I can't answer. She asked me where Daddy is. She asked me why he isn't here. And I just tell her, Daddy's body did not get better. He's with God. She asked me why. And I just say, someone hurt him and we don't know anything else. But the police are trying to help us. And as a parent, that's a really hard conversation to have over and over again with your kid. And London isn't even old enough to have that conversation yet. That's a conversation that she's going to have to carry on with those children, likely for the rest of her life. We see here that there is a vigil put together for April 19th, 2022. Friends and community members came together for the vigil. His widow, Kirsten Bridegan, said she felt lost and alone since her husband was murdered, but the community that gathered for the vigil is helping her get through the pain. It's given me a great sense of strength that I'm not alone, she said. The vigil was planned by 3 women who didn't know Kirsten and Jared. They felt a calling to support their community. The 3 of us bonded together, and after that, we decided we're going to take action and support a stranger, said Aaron Frauenheim, one of the organizers. It's amazing to see the community rally around to help bring him justice, said Adam Bridegan, Jared's brother. They wanted the vigil to send a message. There's still a killer out there in our community, Adam said. I have a lot of faith in the detectives working this, Kirsten said. It's just frustrating that things take time. This is not a TV show. Things don't get solved in 60 minutes. It takes time, and it's hard. Now, around all this, Kirsten has a scare in terms of her security camera picking up something. And here's some of the footage We can see here from the label on the YouTube video, suspicious person caught on camera. Now you can see this movement in the lower left-hand corner of the screen. Now, I got to be honest with you guys. I don't really feel like that's a person, especially when it's played back in real speed like that last playthrough. And I'll tell you why. I've been working with cameras practically my whole life, and the focus, actually the lack of focus there, how blurry this thing is telling me this is an object that is much closer to the lens. Basically how focus works, you can see the truck here. You can see that that's in focus. Pretty much anything beyond that, especially with the types of lenses that are used on these kind of home security cameras, anything beyond that will be in relative focus. You'll be able, like you can see all these other shapes. Nothing's really blurring out here outside of you're getting distortion when things get far. But look, even across the street, you can still make out these shapes. That's a perfect square. That's a perfect square. The only places where you see something like that is when you have a light source, which is blooming like this. Or if you have an object that is super, super close to the lens, it has to be closer to the lens to have this amount of blur. To me, I do believe that it's an insect, it's a bug, it's something that is very, very close to the lens. That being said, over at Daily Mail, we're going to see that Kirsten apparently spoke to an expert and they're saying it's a person. She said, "I was scared. Jared had just been killed. Someone that near the corner of my house. I did not feel okay. I called the detectives, who said to call the local police, and my neighbor, who is ex-military, helped me scan the yard, but we didn't find anything. Unfortunately, her neighbor's cameras that may have had a better angle on the intruder were, she said, switched off." Anytime I hear a fact like that, I have to double check it, because too many times with Daily Mail guys, I've run into bad information. I'm seeing other quotes where she has said the neighbor's cameras didn't pick anything up. And that's a bit different than saying that they were switched off. Admittedly, a lot of doorbell cams in particular, they'll be recording the whole time, but they only save if they notice that there's some type of movement or something like that. So depending on what types of cameras the neighbors might have had, if the movement wasn't big enough to kind of trigger their camera to save that recording, it might be that they didn't have access to it. If it was a person walking across the street, there's probably a pretty good chance that that would be enough to trigger a lot. It depends, because there's settings for your doorbell cams as well. It depends how you have them tuned. But basically, no one else in the neighborhood got any footage of this mysterious person that I'm not sure is actually a person. She said, quote, "Some people have said it looks like a ghost or it was just a bug. But the police had a specialist look at it, and it's a human being." I'm still, I don't think so, guys. The police were supportive about it and sent patrol cars for a while to check on me. I was not okay with it. The timing for me was not okay at all, and we still don't know who it was. Sergeant Johns County Sheriff's Office would not comment on the incident beyond saying that it was an open case. Just so you know, that family, his family lives, I think, approximately a 30-minute drive south of where the shooting happened as well. Not to say that that's all that safe. I mean, obviously, anyone with a vehicle could make that distance, but the shooting did not happen that close to his home. Happened much closer to his ex's home, only a couple miles from there. Bridegan's ex, Shauna Fernandez, and their children did not attend his funeral and instead held a separate memorial service some weeks later. In now deleted blog posts obtained by dailymail.com, Bridegan's former mother-in-law, Shelley Gardner, so that is Shauna's mother, 60 years old, initially claimed that Fernandez and everybody who knows her was uninvited from the funeral. So basically we're hearing that, yeah, the kids were invited, but the mother wasn't. Quote, "I would like to clarify a couple of points." This is her mother on the blog post again. "Yes, Kirsten offered to arrange to pick up Liam and Abby prior to the memorial service and then bring them back. But since not one person from Jared's family, including his parents, had reached out to Liam and Abby, the twins didn't want to be without their mom. The twins' therapist said it was crucial that Liam and Abby attend the memorial for their healing and well-being, and that they need their mother with them," Gardner added. This was disregarded by Kirsten. That's why Shauna decided to help the twins with their own memorial service. And this is a picture of Shauna. The former couple had been locked in almost constant litigation for the past 6 years. And this is where I think, honestly, I think Daily Mail just goes off the rails with the rest of this article. But to sum it up, what we have is a relationship crumbling. Shauna and Jared get together. Shauna's family has a lot of money. Neither of them are really working. They're being supported by the family, like literally families helping them buy houses, helping them move around the country. They have the twins, and the relationship comes apart. And then some very tough things start happening within the home, to the point where Jared feels like he's being monitored. Like there's extra baby monitors that are being placed around the house. There's a lock that's been put on the master bedroom door that he doesn't have a key to. There's things that obviously he's very upset about, she's very upset about, and they really start going at each other. And that continues in through court processes. I think I saw that their divorce file has like, I think 300 separate motions, if I recall correctly. I mean, it is just tit for tat ugliness. And most of Shauna's claims are wrapped up in he's trying to take her money or things like that. There's, trust funds set up for the children he's trying to tap into. And I don't know. I don't think trying to determine who's right in any of that part of it helps with understanding this case. I think what's most important is there's clearly an interpersonal conflict that's going on there. When we look at homicide investigations, of course, we consider who's benefiting from this. As I've been told by experts, homicide is conflict resolution for the person that's committing the homicide. So taking him out of the equation made whose life easier exactly? Is Shauna on that list? I believe so. Are there other people that might be on that list? Absolutely. Am I seeing reports of them being spoken as persons of interest in this case? No. But admittedly, when you're talking a big, nasty, drawn out divorce like this, and there's so many salacious details, and then you have certain publications that are pulling the court records, and then for some reason putting those details out, I still don't understand. Like, the understanding that web does not help the rest of this. All you need to know is really there's a giant conflict that's been going on between them for years. In June, we get a very interesting development being reported here by Crime Online. Ex-wife of Microsoft exec shot dead in front of daughter, lawyers up. Reportedly spied on him before his death. I told you guys about that. She reportedly secured high-powered criminal defense attorney Henry Cox III for the purpose of seeing if steps could be taken to protect her young twins from any publicity surrounding this tragic event. There's something I understand about this and something I don't. After seeing that Daily Mail article and how much personal information they released, yeah, I think she's right. I think she's right to have a lawyer to try to lock some of that stuff down. There's a lot of information that should not be out about those twins. On the flip side of that, criminal defense attorney, and apparently his profile, like, sometimes you'll have attorneys and they specialize in several different aspects of law. Not him. Apparently his profile, he is specifically for criminal defense. A little odd. But we have a quote from him. As for any other reason for the family to have or need counsel, whether it be myself or anyone else, there is none. So he's basically trying to say, look, she's not using me for criminal defense for some reason. Like, I don't know if it's really like a PR attorney. I think there's other specialties that you would hire for trying to deal with someone in the media like that. But a criminal defense attorney and someone being described as a high-powered criminal defense attorney, it's interesting. Admittedly, we know she comes from money. Her family's from money. So, getting the best in the biz for whatever you're looking for, probably going to happen in that type of occurrence. I'm just questioning the choice in terms of the type of attorney. Since Jared Bridegan's shooting death in February, his ex-wife, Shauna Gardner, has become the target of suspicion and scorn while being stalked and photographed by tabloids. I was asked to not talk to the media or give a public statement, and I've tried really hard to do that, but with a level of speculation, I felt now it was necessary to speak out. She is finally speaking out here to actionnewsjax.com. Quote, anytime divorce comes into any situation, it's messy. It just is. I really want to respect his family and him, and I will say that I think we both love our kids. Bridegan and Gardner both wanted full custody of their twins, now 10 years old. In the end, the two reached a custody agreement. They shared custody, and whenever the children were at one parent's house, the other would come over Wednesday and have a date night. That's exactly what Bridegan and his twins did the night that he was killed. So on Wednesday, they would go over. Effectively, he would pick up his kids. They would go do something. I think in this case, I know at least his 2-year-old daughter was talking about getting ice cream. He takes the kids out. He takes them back to the home. He drops them off. He starts heading home, and that's when the shooting happens. Another quote from Shauna, I remember my son tucking him in and him saying it was a good date night. He was happy, and they both came in happy, and we went through our normal routine, and we can have some time to cuddle, and then we'll tuck you in. Gardner spoke of the moment she found out her ex-husband, the father of her twins, had been murdered. Quote, I found out in the middle of the night and I was shocked. I fell to the floor because I was devastated. What was I going to have to tell the kids? A complete shock. They were, I think, in shock. They were very emotional, and that was the kind of the beginning of their journey. That day, Gardner said Kirsten, Jared's widow, texted her asking her not to speak publicly about the murder. The day before a vigil was hosted by Bridegan's widow, Kirsten, at Celebration Park, Gardner was photographed there with her kids by the tabloid Daily Mail. She said of the images and the article, talk about violation of privacy. That was something it pulled the rug out from underneath us because my kids know they were photographed and they were worried. They were worried that their images are out there. They were worried people might be following us. Now, admittedly, I've been looking at all kinds of different press on this. Their images were already out there. Their images were out there before the Daily Mail. I mean, is it scary? I'm sure. Like you're a 10-year-old kid, you're mourning the loss of your father, your mother's taking you to a place close to where it happened. You're already dealing with all kinds of emotions. And then you have someone aiming something at you. Now, admittedly, it's a camera, but knowing that your father had been shot, anyone holding up something in that manner and pointing it at you in that way, especially from a 10-year-old perspective, is going to be traumatic. This whole angle about, now the kids were scared because their pictures were out there. It just, between social media, I mean, pictures of kids are out there in general, but even the more legit news sources, they were showing photos of the families. A few of them were pretty smart and kind of blurring out those kids in particular, but not all of them. Those pictures were already out there. She explained her reasoning, about the criminal defense attorney she got. I consulted with a criminal defense attorney with an attorney for my kids. He was referred to me by several friends, and ultimately my kids' images and videos were being used in the media without consent. Gardner said Cox was hired to protect her kids and to keep them from having another run-in with the Daily Mail. She's basically calling them out specifically. We asked her if she thinks she will face criminal charges. She said no, that she's cooperated with detectives. And of course, they also asked her if she did it, and she says no, or if she was any part of it. She says no, she was not responsible in any way. I don't know where this photo comes from. I don't know if this is one of them. I know there's some online scrutiny just because of what she's wearing here. The shirt says, it's fine, I'm fine, everything is fine. I think it's just a t-shirt, just a commentary t-shirt. I don't know that she's wearing it in particular to try to make some kind of message about what's going on with this case in particular. But so if things weren't already kind of salacious enough with all the information from the divorce kicking out around there is then someone that comes forward that works at a tattoo shop. And this guy says back in 2015 that Shauna came into the shop. She wanted to get a piercing and she got the piercing. Apparently he befriended her. They went out to eat somewhere, and she basically said that she was having trouble with her husband, and was there any way that did he know anyone that could shut him up? Quote, shut him up. Now, this person whose name is not being released out there says, quote, I didn't take that at the time as anything malicious. I can now understand that that might be interpreted differently in retrospect. Admittedly, we're talking about a comment from 2015. She's gone through a rough time. She's obviously making personal changes. Another thing he notes is that, quote, she went from being this goody two-shoes girl to this wild lady. Apparently she came back. She got more piercings in different places. He says that it seemed like she was coming back and things were getting crazier and crazier each time that she went back. So she's going through a change. I don't know if any of you have been through a divorce. I certainly went through a little bit of a change coming out of my first marriage as well. But saying something like that, asking something like that, we've already got her on the radar. Is it worth noting? I do think it is, but we do have to keep in mind it's from 7 years ago, from a particularly tough point in her life. She does comment on that and some other things here at Jacksonville.com. She declined to comment on the details of the divorce. She says, I don't see anything good in airing our dirty laundry. She denied reports that she had an affair that led to the end of the marriage. Essentially, there's this story that she started having an affair with someone she was training with. You might notice from some of the photos that she seems to be a bit of a fitness buff. We'll get some more details on that, but she's denying it. She says there was no affair. She also addressed a report about her asking a tattoo parlor employee in 2015 if he knew anyone who would shut up her ex-husband. She acknowledged making the statement. People say such things during bitter divorces, she said, but she denied having any intent to harm him. Our relationship was pretty complicated and remained pretty complicated, she said. So she does address it. Is it enough? I don't know. Then we have a few other twists still left in this story. Once again, I don't know how helpful it is to the case, but I think we're starting to understand a little bit now that she's speaking about Shauna's personality, the type of interactions that she was having with Jared, also an interaction that she had with Kirsten here. Florida ex-wife of slain Microsoft executive asks widow for death certificate. Quote, my attorney has requested a copy of Jared's death certificate for the family court. You can send it to me or to him and his paralegal directly, whichever you prefer, wrote Shauna in the terse February 28th email to Kirsten Bridegan. February 28th is 12 days after the murder. She's emailing his current wife asking for a copy of the death certificate. Kirsten says she was shocked by the email. Quote, I was in my car and my hands were shaking. My heart was beating so fast. I was like, who does this? This is so evil. Here I am planning a funeral and she's asking for a death certificate. Now, right off the bat, my first thought was, why isn't she getting it herself? Like, you don't have to request it from the wife. There's no rule about that. And the article actually points this out as well. Kirsten thankfully didn't respond to the email. Noted New York City-based defense lawyer Todd Spodek, who also specializes in matrimonial law, said that Gardner Fernandez's request was highly unusual. Quote, I would never have my clients do anything like this. That's the other thing I thought. Like, she has an attorney. Your attorney makes those requests. Your attorney writes the letters, or their paralegal, and sends that stuff in. Why is she doing this? Why is she reaching out directly in that way? It kind of feels like a gouge to me. It kind of feels like a poke, and I don't understand it. But back to the expert. He would never have his clients do anything like this, especially given the acrimonious relationship between the ex-wife and the widow. There was no urgency to the matter, and the request could be misconstrued, he said, obviously. He then continues, attorneys have process servers and paralegals who can easily obtain a death certificate. It makes no sense to reach out to the wife. So once again, just kind of raises the question, what's going on here? This picture here, also something else I haven't pointed out yet. Not only did Jared get remarried, Shauna gets remarried as well. Now, there is another run of articles. Once again, I don't think it really ties into this too much. I can see why some members of the press are running with it. Her current husband was looked at when a neighborhood cat was killed, shot by a BB gun, apparently, and shot so many times by the BB gun that it couldn't be saved. From what I see, he was investigated. Nothing came out of it. No charges came out of it. I think that the press is running with that because they're kind of, you know, we know the convention of, oh, people that are murderers, sometimes they harm animals as well. And I personally, I think there's already enough to look at in that direction, trying to drum up some other interest. This might be the guy because, oh, he killed a cat in the neighborhood. We don't have proof that he actually did. But outside of that, it seems super, super weak. So I don't want to press into it too much, but I want to be clear with you guys about what's out there, because I'm hoping that you guys are going to go and do your own digging as well. And I don't want you to be like, oh, John didn't tell us about this. There it is. I personally don't think it's super important in this case. And I worry about sometimes how media uses this information and puts it out there in ways that could be seen as kind of reckless. And this case, unfortunately, has that all over it. Over at Fox News, Florida personal trainer confirms alleged affair with ex-wife. So we had her say, no, it didn't happen. Now we have someone reach out to the press saying, that was me. Yes, it happened. The Florida ex-wife of murdered Microsoft manager Jared Bridegan denied having an affair that ended their marriage, but her former personal trainer, who says he was her one-time lover, contradicted her claim. As a Christmas gift in late 2014, Bridegan bought his then-wife, Shanna, a package of training sessions, but the fitness instructor said the relationship turned romantic weeks later. The trainer said that Shanna told him that she and Bridegan were separated for months when their sessions allegedly took an unprofessional turn. They weren't really speaking, said the instructor, who asked that his name be withheld to protect his privacy. They were living on opposite ends of the house. She said she had grown up Mormon and didn't want that anymore. Bridegan, on the other hand, remained a devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Bridegan's family members said the pair didn't separate until shortly before Gardner Fernandez filed for divorce on February 23, 2015, after he allegedly found several explicit messages between his then-wife and the man who claims he was her weightlifting lover. Friends say the doting father was willing to forgive the betrayal for the sake of the children, but Gardner Fernandez wanted out, giving the judge a terse explanation for the split. Quote, "We don't love each other anymore," according to court papers. The day after filing for divorce, she visited the tattoo parlor where she started getting her piercings. And on that, she had to fill out a form that listed an emergency contact. Well, who did she put as her emergency contact? Her trainer. Sure seems like it was a bit more of a relationship than she's admitting to publicly. Former Manhattan prosecutor Daniel Bibb, who now works as a criminal defense lawyer, said the alleged affair is relevant to the murder probe. Quote, "Assuming what the personal trainer said is true, anytime a person demonstratively lies during a homicide investigation, it shows a consciousness of guilt. It's not about the affair. It's that she may have lied when she knows she's under scrutiny." I don't know. Like, what do you guys think about that? I think there's a possibility she's just embarrassed by it and she just doesn't want it to go out there publicly. I don't necessarily think that I mean, if she is responsible, could you look back in hindsight and say, oh, well, there was a little bit of an indicator there? If she's found responsible, like coming from it in that direction, I would say, yeah, you could say, okay, obviously she was caught up on the story she was putting out there. She was worried about being found out. So she didn't want to have that good of a reason out there in terms of the tough feelings that was going on between them. Coming at it from this direction where we don't know the outcome of this, we don't know, she hasn't been named a person of interest. She hasn't been named a suspect. I don't think it's strong enough to say, well, this is certainly an indicator that if she's lying about this, she's lying about everything else. This is a particular type of lie in my mind that she's very likely not happy with in terms of what she did at that time or what she went through at that time. Doing my best to try to keep this above the board and untangle some of the nonsense out there, but There's just a lot, guys. 6 months later, Jared Bridegan's unsolved murder haunts family and the community. Bridegan's widow, Kirsten, said living without him is unimaginable. Sometimes I feel like we're just a spectacle, she said, about all the attention on this case. People don't realize that this is our reality every single day. We wake up every day and Jared's still not here. His car is not pulling in the driveway. This is real. Myself, 4 children, and an enormous amount of friends and family are all suffering every single day because of this. This is real. She said she was also thankful for the notoriety of the case, hoping that all this exposure, all this talk is going to lead to more tips being called in. One of those tips being the one that leads to an arrest for the person or persons responsible. Of course, if you have the information that this family needs, please call it in. We have multiple options for you down below in the description box for different agencies. There's so many agencies that are helping with this. On top of that, there is, as of now, a $55,000 reward for information. First Coast Crime Stoppers is offering $50,000 of that. And then, of course, we've got the ATF offering $5,000. A lot of that money that's part of the Crime Stoppers reward actually raised privately by the Bridegan family and anonymous donors. And I think it's amazing that there's people out there willing to do that. So big rewards on this as well. Quote, I just have this overwhelming sense that it's going to be figured out, Kirsten said. I've felt that way since early on. There are days when I do lose hope. I'm just frustrated, angry. I don't want to talk to anybody. But the majority of the time, I feel like justice is coming. Just be patient. And as of when this article was written was just a few weeks ago, it's noting that that weekend, Jared's widow, Kirsten, and loved ones celebrated Bexley's 3rd birthday and their baby London's 1st birthday. They're now noting the birthdays and holidays that are ticking by without her husband and their father. Over at firstcoastnews.com, what does the police department think about this? Quote, I do believe that there's one person out there that does know what happened, and we just want them to come forward so this investigation can move forward and we can find out who did it, said Sergeant Tanya Tater, so that we can give that family some closure. It's not going to make up for what happened, but at least we can give them some closure. Kirsten had one last comment I want to share with you guys. He was a great dad, the best spouse, and I want people to know that so they know why it's important that we find that truck. Once again, the information on the truck is here. Ford F-150, dark blue with brown tan trim, running boards, also had a toolbox in the back of it. Reward's been updated, $50,000 reward. That truck is between the years 2004 and 2008. If you have information on it, you can call it right into Crime Stoppers or use any of that contact information that we have down below. It's about justice for Jared, and we can see that here on a signpost left at the site where his life was taken from him, leaving behind a wife and a 2-year-old girl, a 2-year-old that witnessed this go down. There are 2 accounts that Kirsten has started, one at Instagram, Justice for Jared B. Of course, I'll have links to this down in the description box down below. There is also a TikTok account. Please show your support by coming to these, giving them a follow. There is also a GoFundMe for the Memorial Fund for Jared Bridegan. They've raised over $65,000 at this point, but I bet you guys that's probably not even a year of his salary. And we've got a stay-at-home mom now responsible for raising these 2 children on her own. I don't know if she's going to get back to work, if now, daycare is going to become an issue. I want to make a donation. On behalf of myself and my amazing supporters, thank you so much to everyone that gives through Patreon, PayPal, Coffee, or by buying merchandise. We're making a donation to this GoFundMe just as soon as I'm done filming here today. Thank you guys so much. I can't do it without your support. This family needs help. They need you. Think about, do you have any friends in this area? Do you have any acquaintances that you can share this video with? I did my best to cut through. There's a lot of noise. This isn't the type of case where you can just read an article or two and feel like you got it all. There's a lot of information parted out across all kinds of different places, and it's covered up by a lot of fuzz. There's just a lot of static on it. So I've done my best to do this as respectfully and focused as possible. So please share this video. Let's get some more hearts open and caring about this family and see if the right one is touched and that phone gets picked up and a call gets made. I want to thank patron Rachel for increasing her pledge. If you want to support the channel, please visit lordandarts.com. There you can sign up for Patreon, sign up for PayPal, buy merchandise, or even buy us a coffee like Beholder recently did. We really appreciate your support as we look to help these families in these tough situations. Have a great weekend, everyone. Take care, and please come back on Monday for a brand new episode of Case Cracked, right here on the Lord and Arts channel.